I did the whole happy face lotto ticket thing again. And I did a peace sign, kind of, and I just found a happy face. The rocks with dry seaweed look kind of like heads with comb-overs. So I made it to Sanctuary. It's me and the ocean. And feels good to be here. I did have some kind of anxiety in my heart last night, but I laid down in bed and started reading. And laying down seemed to help. I'm not sure if it helped, but I was reading something different too. I got a book at a little used store called The Grape Cure, and it's about cancer. And somebody mentioned to me the other day, oh, you should find something that helps cancer. And so when I saw that book, it was only $1, I figured I'd buy it. And reading this lady's account, it's pretty interesting. I got halfway through the book. It's a small book. And I made a couple notes of things she said, and I'll look at those after. So it's interesting the languaging she used sometimes. Or maybe I'll find that now. Before that, I don't know if I read this thing that Dr. David Bohm said. He said, wholeness is not a place you can get. Wholeness is a kind of attitude or approach to the whole of life. If we can have a coherent approach to reality, then reality will respond coherently to us. I love that last sentence. Oh, it's a seal. Another thing David Bohm said was there's no reason why science should be measurement. And I thought that was interesting because I mentioned how science is something we can do with our own eyes when we can see clearly. We don't even have to measure. The immeasurable and the infinite speaks to us and lets us know how it works. And I made a note about how there's describing extraordinary experiences, and then there's the meaning and the wisdom that one gleans from it. But that could even be dangerous in that then one feels like one has an applicable pattern. When life doesn't conform to a pattern, and that's something that we see when we start having these so-called extraordinary experiences, is that reality doesn't actually fit the pattern that we've been imposing upon it and living by. And I really feel there really is something to this relativity and consciousness thing. Like as we exist now, we exist relative to each other. We're all sort of in separate worlds, so then depending on how our two worlds meet, that's how we manifest. Like the mathematics between the two. So we're sort of a result of my conditioning meets your conditioning and how that plays out, as opposed to the notion of the possibility of an actuality based on one mind. And I feel that that's kind of what we go into when we go into mania and everything works out so perfect. It's because we're in this one mind actuality where things aren't dual. So whatever is within us is immediately presented to us in actuality, because life isn't going to a pattern, it's going to what is there in the moment. So what is there in the moment within us, if it's a lot of energy, then a lot of energy comes towards us in terms of people and things and ideas. So I'm not sure about that, but I noticed that on Tuesday, Thursday last week, I had a lot of calm breathing, like 40 minutes plus. But I was stressed out, like I wasn't calm. So this is where I think the relativity comes in, is that when I have sort of a crisis and my brain energy gets slowed down, I'm slowing down, and as I slow down, my breathing lengthens because I've slowed down in time. So I'm wondering if that's part of what is happening there. It's pointing to this relativity. And having to interact with those who are part of one's conditioning. If one doesn't act like one's conditioned self, then people start to think, well, what's wrong with you? You're different. But one can be different if one is by oneself, because there's nobody to say, hey, you're different. What's the problem? So, yeah, I don't know about that part either. So I definitely can't back up videos to iCloud or upload them to YouTube where I'm at. The internet is too slow. So I did bring external hard drives to back things up to, because I won't have enough space on my phone. If I make videos at the rate that I do, I won't have enough space on my phone to make more. And I could make audio instead, but somehow that doesn't work as well. And when I first got here where I'm at, I took 50 milligrams of trazodone and half a zopiclone and a Benadryl, and of course the 2 quetiapine. So that's 4 medications. And I did that again last night, and I slept for 12 hours, which was good. I needed that nice long sleep. But I had some really weird dreams. I don't really have weird dreams, but these ones were weird. I had a dream that I met Celine Dion. And then I went to her concert, and the front rows were empty, and I moved up to the front rows. And she was singing, and then when she saw me, she said, "Hi, Annie," and gave me a big hug. And that was so nice. Like, she stopped singing to say hi and give me a hug. Which, oh, that's very unrealistic. And then I had a dream where I was at home, and then my parents came up to me and said that last night the police brought you back and you were covered in sand. They found you on the beach. And I think it was a continuation from the last dream, because I was thinking to myself, I went right home after the Celine Dion concert. I didn't go anywhere. But then I knew it was quantum weirdness, and I was sort of mad at the universe. But then I thought it was interesting that the police brought me home and they didn't bring me to a psych ward. So I thought that was cool. And I woke up and I was fine. And I think part of that stems from, I have a friend, or I haven't talked to this person in a long time, but they had an experience where they were found somewhere in a car, with an open bottle of pills, and they had to smash the window to get this person out, and then they took this person to the psych ward. And I remember talking to this person and asking what happened, and they were saying they were visiting somebody and they were driving home. That's all they remember. They don't remember anything about going to this location and taking pills. It was almost as if, to me, and this person, they could never explain it, and it was almost as if, to me, the universe just kind of put them there as this cry for help of not being able to communicate with those who they were in contact with. And that's one of those quantum weirdnesses my brain can't figure out. And I feel like the universe could do that to me one day, obviously, in terms of like an accident and then wake up in the hospital. Or I remember watching that movie, The Abundance Factor, and the guy in it, Riley Dane, talked about how he had this thing happen where he jumped out the window in his sleep or something and woke up in a hospital. And they had a name for that disorder, as if it was some kind of medical disorder. But then it changed his life. So those kind of weird things can happen, where something takes one over and just sort of moves one from one place to another to get one the heck out of where one is at. And that can be part of what happens in a psychiatric emergency. And then the other part of the dream was there was these human-like beings experimenting on me and someone else. At one point they tied my finger with like floss to the other person's leg, and I could feel the pain of it. And then they stuck a needle in the bottom of their foot. So it was kind of like, probably like an alien experiment type dream, but they were human. And then they flew off, and when they flew off, they were sort of missing their legs, and they were kind of like this wavy human structure, not really fully embodied. And I wasn't afraid. I tried not to be afraid. Because that's part of what I feel I'm attempting to transcend right now, is the fear. Because I had that weird experience last week, and it was kind of the same, how I saw a friend whom I care about, and then had all this blasting off into space stuff happen while smiling, and it didn't go into the I need to kill myself thing. And so that's the part that hasn't happened yet, is, oh my gosh, I have to kill myself. But it said, or something said, you've taken too many supplements. Or it might have said, I've taken too many supplements. I need to medicate myself. I can't remember if it said I or you, and that could be significant. So instead of saying, oh my gosh, I need to kill myself, and jumping up, feeling like I need to kill myself, I got up feeling like I needed to medicate myself. And I tried taking some more supplements, and then I did take extra medications. And I was prepared to do that, because my goal now isn't necessarily not to take any medications. It's, I don't mind taking a bunch when I have to sort of knock myself out and slow the brain down. Because it grows back, That's why people diagnosed with bipolar, most of the time, at some point, they do have a so-called relapse, is because the power of this energy and whatever this process is much stronger than the medications, and the medications can only hold on for so long. And it could be also that taking the 50 milligrams of quetiapine a day changed the flavor of it. I'm not sure, because I was taking it, so I don't know otherwise. Last time I wasn't taking any meds, and it wasn't good. But it gave me hope knowing that I had this trip planned. I think it could be important to be in sanctuary when one has a crisis, or get to a point where one can have a major crisis and then get away right after, because then the drama that wants to be created by those lower states can be neutralized by sitting at the ocean by oneself. Like, I'm not going to argue with the people close to me sitting here on these rocks hours away. And that's part of what the fear is in those lower states. There's this fear of oneself. It could be felt as the fear of the other people who are going to come and create the drama, but I feel it as a fear of myself, because I can't trust how I'm going to act in those lower states. I know I'm going to act like a jerk. And that's how it happened over the winter, and it was so awful. I just didn't want that to be replicated. And so I got away without creating too much crap. And yeah, so those were the dreams. And the Grape Cure book, this woman said at one point, the story was from in the 1920s when she had cancer, and she suffered for years, and there was a point when she thought she was going to die. Well, multiple points. But at one point in the book she says, "More than ever I realized the importance of saving my own life in order to convince and try to save others." And that's on page 7. And because I've sort of thought about giving up to some extent, but that's what is part of this lower energy state. It comes to mind that I should give up and perhaps end my life. Like, there's a little bit of the suicidal ideation, but it's of a different flavor. It's not out of super fear or super panic or anxiety, even though I've had a bit of anxiety. It's more like rational. It's like, I don't know if I deserve to live. And then I was thinking of that movie with Will Smith. I don't remember what it's called, but it's the one where, spoiler alert, it's the one where this is a spoiler, this tells you what happens, so don't listen for like 20 seconds. You might know it though. He's like this insurance agent, and he's kind of pestering these people. And the reason he's pestering them is to test if he feels they're the right people to give his organs to, because he's going to end his life, because he ended his wife's life by texting and driving, and other people in another car. So he felt like he couldn't live with himself anymore. So it came to mind that, and I bought this other book for $1, and it was 50 things you can do for under $10 or something like that. And I read through it. It was a quick read, and I started feeling more calm when I read it, because it's like actionable items. And one was, only boil the water in the kettle that you need, don't boil the whole kettle full of water. And I never thought about that before, though I have done the whole turn the water off when brushing one's teeth. I do that. Kettle thing I can do. But anyway, the other thing was sign up to be an organ donor. And that kind of freaks me out, because for me, a lot of what I plan or have in my mind and heart is possible to come true. But the thing is, one can have one's life ended at any moment. So it doesn't necessarily mean because one signed up for organ donation that's what happens. But anyway, what I'm trying to say is, I had, this is the rational planning to end one's life, is finding a way to do it that one can then have one's organs donated. So if I did it in isolation and I was dead for 10 hours before someone found me, well, they can't use my organs anymore, I don't think. Whereas if it's done in a way that, and I don't know if one overdoses on pills, if that reduces the organs that can be donated. So I'm not sure the way to do it, to make sure one's organs can be donated. Now, that sounds really crazy, right? But at the same time, people with bipolar disorder, 20% of us, or 25%, I think it's 20%, 1 in 5, do end up doing it. So what if there was a way, if we could tell that somebody was likely to do it and they wanted to be done to save other people's lives? Like, maybe I feel like I don't deserve to live, or life has no meaning at some point, but other people are waiting there for something. They're waiting there for life and hoping for it. So I also have experience with this whole bipolar phenomenon, extreme states of empathy and extreme states of wanting to give and be caring and altruistic. So that would be an extreme act of altruism, to give up one's life for others. And one might think, well, people do that by going to war, but I don't know about that. But when one is losing the war within oneself, like when one knows, I'm just losing this war, I can't do this anymore, could there be a way to save other people's lives? Because apparently, it saves 8 people's lives, and then other people benefit as well, 100 people or something. This is just me talking. I'm not saying I'm going to do anything like this. But then there's the question of if somebody would want my heart, because sometimes it has this anxiety and stuff. Is it a good heart to give away? I don't know. So this is sort of stemming from reading this whole saving my own life to try to convince others and save others, is what the lady said in the grape cure. But what I'm trying to do is save others like me, if I'm able to save myself. And who knows, I might not ultimately be able to save myself. But then maybe even if I can't, I can save other people. So, but I'd like to save myself. That's what I would like. Because I think if more people like me can learn to navigate this on their own, in quotes, because we're never completely on our own, but without things like inpatient psychiatric units, then that would save a lot more lives. So when I read the whole thing about the importance of saving my own life to convince and save others, it made me realize that it is really important to try to save my own life, to help other people like me, because that will help a lot more people than if I die or end my life. Unless there's a way to figure out how to have help to end it to save others. That would be a really weird thing. But, and I don't know who can give away what or how it works. So, I don't know, I probably shouldn't even be talking about this. But, yeah, I'm not really serious about that per se, but I was just thinking, if there is a point where I can't live with myself, then maybe I can let a bunch of other people live instead. But right now, I'm definitely on the track of what the grape cure lady says, which is I need to save my own life in order to help save others' lives. And I do think I'm getting somewhere. I don't know. I'm planning to go to California in October, and I calculated that my next crisis should be first week or second week of December. Because this time, if I count since October 1st of last year until the crisis, it was almost 8 months. And I was hoping for 8.5, like mid-June. And if I count from the last crisis, which was mid-October, like October 15th, then it was only 7.5 months. 7.5 months. And then if I wonder if that was even the crisis that I just had, and I count up to 8.5 months, I still could be in trouble up until mid-June. So I don't know. That's why this month will be really telling. And it'll be really telling to see, like, was that the crisis? I still don't know. And if it wasn't, how will I deal with that? Because I have been taking some other things, like I took 1,000 milligrams of uridine today and yesterday. I took clove oil today. I took some inositol, which tastes like icing sugar. It's quite good. And I'm taking 2 a day of the brain gastrotin now, the CDP choline, and the alpha GPC. And I took 1 D-serine. But the higher dose is more like 2,000 to 5,000 of uridine, not 1,000. Like twice a day, and more inositol, and more D-serine. So I'm taking like lower doses of those ones. The D-serine is kind of for psychosis, and then inositol for second messenger, and uridine is like an anti-suicide one. So I don't know if by taking these sort of early, if it will decrease their efficacy if I have a really big suicidal crisis. Because the crisis I had last week was like the suicidal crisis, but I didn't feel suicidal. There was no fear. It was weird. It was messed up. It was unexplainable to a certain extent, but it wasn't scary. And so, it not being scary, there was no reaction of, oh my gosh, I have to kill myself because that was so scary. Like going into nothingness and then reconnecting with the body. It said, I've taken too many supplements, I need to medicate myself. So it was almost like saying, okay, your brain has grown a lot. You've grown a lot. There's a lot of energy going through you as your brain is very energized, sped up to a certain extent. And now it's got to slow down. So you need to medicate yourself. And change the relativity of consciousness. And when that happens, like before, if I'm afraid and then I go get help because I'm afraid, then all the people close to me come to me because I'm afraid, and then they do things to me because I'm afraid. So by not being afraid, I eliminated all that. Now, I was quite angry for a bit, but anger on the scale of consciousness is higher in consciousness than fear. So perhaps I've sort of decreased the fear, but I still have anger to deal with, for sure. And I felt that anger wanting to create angry confrontation, but I waited, like, if I can stay away from those who I would project that anger onto and create drama until the anger subsides a bit, then that scene that I create with that person won't be as bad. And then if I create a bad scene, it's going to lower my consciousness even more because they're going to respond. So it's going to be amplified because not only am I angry, somebody's being angry back at me, and we're passing that energy back, which amplifies it, which even lowers things and makes things worse. So keeping that stuff to myself is good. And waiting for it to pass, because it does. This too shall pass. And there's something else I was going to say about that. Like, my brain went on a different track, which doesn't usually happen. It doesn't usually go on a different track and say, okay, well, I'll keep going with this and then come back to that. It just talks. And so I see that by not talking about that right away, it's totally gone. I have no idea what it was, unless I sit here and ponder for a sec. I don't know. It doesn't really matter. But the point is that I'm in this nice area, beautiful, high-level consciousness, scenery, and I think that'll help to neutralize stuff that comes up. So yesterday I had some anxiety, but I don't feel the anger, because there's nothing around to possibly provoke that. There's nothing around to possibly make me angry, so I don't have to feel that anger as a response to whatever is going to come at me, or fear in terms of being afraid of myself, because I know I'm in an angry state. So anybody that I interact with who I feel safe to project all my crap onto is going to get it. And so I do need to look into this anger and everything. And there was another point in the book. She was talking about it, or shared an article in the Grape Cure about an article she wrote about the Grape Cure, but I don't think she mentioned the Grape Cure. She was trying to get people interested in it before she told what it was. But she said, quote, "Nothing has been said in this article about the mutual aspect of healing. Nothing has been said in this article about the mental aspect of healing. The subject is too big. It forms the most thrilling story of my life, but I must now be content to state that I became superconscious. I had unerring hunches and cultivated a bowing acquaintance with my subliminal self, whatever that may be." And that's on page 8. So that was really interesting, because... And she also mentions lying, like sunbathing, as a cure, and I think forest bathing, but laying in the morning sun. So right now I'm earthing by having my feet on these rocks, for sure. And another quote from the book that was really interesting: "It is safe to say that the first 7 to 10 days on grapes only would be required to clear the stomach and bowels of their ancient accumulations. Nature works thoroughly. She does not build on a rotten foundation. The purification of every part of the body must be complete before new tissue can be built." And so she's talking about how grapes only, and there's this very specific protocol, makes a person lose weight, and then eventually they stop losing weight and the body starts to rebuild itself. And it made me think of how when I was first in this state, I lost a lot of weight. I went down to 90 pounds. And I think part of it is that in those tissues that we have, that's a lot of the accumulated toxicity and past memories and garbage. So as we move further away from that, we start losing weight when we're not holding on to things. And it was interesting because after I went down to 90 pounds, I was thrown in the hospital and medicated, and then I put on 50 pounds really quickly, and that was mostly like toxic tissue. It was all fueled by the toxic medication. And then that toxic tissue was more in resonance with the toxicity of the world that I re-entered into, because I think I was somewhat away from that. So I just thought the whole concept of getting back down to nothing and then rebuilding from there was cool. And another interesting point was, she said no strenuous work should be done after a cooked meal. Like, she was talking about the people that can't help but eat cooked food. I was thinking there's no boats out, and then all of a sudden there are all these boats. And anyway, she was talking about people that, okay, it says here, no strenuous work should be done, and it's especially recommended to refrain from every form of brain work immediately following a cooked meal. So that sort of implies eating a cooked meal, which she's saying is bad after doing all this grapes and raw food. It's like, by putting energy into the brain, the cooked food is becoming a part of the brain in that process. So that's that book so far. It's interesting. And I've been drawing this daily. And I showed before how I saw a happy face on a rock. I was thinking about, I do writing sometimes and I do talking, but you know, I drew a happy face as the lottery ticket number selection, and then I saw it on the barn, and then I saw one in the clouds the other day, and then I saw one on the rock. So drawing something makes it more salient. So drawing a heart and a happy face and a star and peace sign and infinity and a tree and ocean waves and lightning as an energy. You know, that's cool. Maybe one day one only has to draw out a few symbols in the day, not even writing out words. Because we don't want to see words. That's sort of our problem, is that we see with words. And so, yeah, like I said, the last 2 nights I've taken 50 milligrams of trazodone instead of 100. Tonight I might try to take 75 milligrams trazodone, to bump it up a little bit, and just take a little smidgen of the Zopiclone, because I don't have a lot of that and I don't really want to be on it, because I think that one is habit forming. So I might do that and see what happens. And I am taking the Benadryl, because I could always keep taking Benadryl, which at least it's not a psychopharmaceutical. And hopefully I only have to take that extra stuff for like a month or so. And I don't know if I will end up being off the quetiapine at some point. I might keep going with it. If I have a big crisis in the next month, then I'll see that the quetiapine didn't really prevent it. But if I don't, if that little crisis was it, then maybe taking 50 milligrams a night is a good thing in a way. Maybe it's enough to make it not go so deep. But the thing that I do worry about is that by taking meds, more of it adds up in the background, like in the subconscious. And then when the meds, then it becomes even harder to stop the meds once one wants to stop. So, who knows? And we'll see also, because I'm taking all these supplements. It's quite expensive. And so, if I have a big crisis and these supplements don't help to navigate it, and you know, I don't know how much they are helping because I'm having to up the meds, but if I say in 2 weeks don't have to take any meds extra except the quetiapine, then that's a pretty big win, because when I went back on them in October last year, I was on them for months, and I eventually did get down to just the 2 quetiapine, and I couldn't come off of that. Hey, it's a whale. Sweet. Oh, sweet. I wondered if I would see whales. No wonder there's boats. They're looking at their whale watching. wonder if the whales will hear me. Oh my gosh, that is so awesome. And the seagull. It's killer whales. Who needs all these words when one can see killer whales? The poor whales. If we're not chasing them to kill them, we're chasing them to take pictures of them. I'm sure all those boat engines are quite bothersome to them. Because they function based on sound a lot. And hearing all that noise. It's okay, whalies. Talking to myself for over half an hour, I've had 9 minutes of calm breathing. So I think that is a good indication that talking to myself is good. And I can't remember if I said how I copied and pasted some of this conversation I had with an enlightened master, and I said, is all this bad stuff happening because I stopped talking to myself? So I was in dialogue with myself in that. And what is myself? So I was talking about some of the extra supplements I'm taking. I took 400 milligrams of SAM E, and I did take methylfolate. So like I said, I don't know if taking this stuff now is the right time. I was supposed to take the neuroplasticity stuff right after the crisis, and I'm assuming that was a crisis, but it's sort of like, was that a crisis? It wasn't that bad. So I'm not sure if it's the quetiapine that made it not as bad, or if it's also taking all these supplements. Because the good thing about if I decided these supplements aren't helping is it would save some money, that's for sure. But they do seem to be helping. The fact that I could have a crisis and then get away a few days later, that's really good. That could be worth it. And so now, if that was the crisis, I have up to 3 months of struggle. Does this look like struggle? No. But my brain does feel kind of weird, like it's hard to know what to do. I have things to do and I feel like I want to do them. I want to explore around here a little bit, and I'm studying a few things. And I brought my coloring because that could be helpful. I did bring a lot of stuff. I did forget my hairdryer. I could have brought hangers and a power bar, which I might go to a thrift store for one of these days. And yesterday I had really, really good sushi. I might go there again tonight so I don't have to make dinner. That's the thing, like without having, I think if I had my own environment, own kitchen and stuff, then it'd be easier to remember how to make myself dinner. But right now, I don't even know how. And that's one of the things that happens when somebody goes to the psych ward, is it's helpful that meals are provided. And I'm kind of in a space, I just had a crisis where I wish somebody would just feed me. But at least I can drive and go get food, but it's more expensive that way. But the thing is, I don't stress about that right now. I go with the flow because hopefully at some point within the next year or two, I will find an environment that is stable and restful and peaceful that I want to stay in. And then, so it's a matter of treading water until then. So if I have to spend extra money on food because I'm not settled, well, I don't want to create stress for myself by thinking, oh, you have to cook, even though it's really hard for your brain to figure it out in a new environment. So, yeah, just taking it easy that way, which could lead me to go into debt, but that's okay, because if I can get through some of this, at some point I'll be able to function and figure out how to earn more money. Right now, if I tried to mix that in with this, I do work a little bit, but if I tried to make working a lot my main focus, then it'd be harder to navigate this. Even though last year I did work for a whole month on night shifts when I was totally psychotic in lower states, which is another strategy. So, yeah, so this next month, see if I have another crisis, and if not, maybe that was it, and then this is the 3 months of struggle, which could be minimized to a couple weeks of struggle, or blips of struggle, or a month of struggle. And it isn't really a struggle, it's just the brain doesn't feel like it can keep organized as much. And also somebody emailed me about doing private peer support, which is interesting because I was going to create like advocacy business, but my brain imploded, so I didn't. So maybe there's an opportunity to work with someone who's already created something like that, because I'm not good at creating the structures of things. I don't know what I'm good at it. And yeah, I think that's about it for today. It's quite a bit cooler here, but it feels hot. It says it's like 14 or 16, but the sun feels hot, so it's not as cold as I thought it was going to be, which is good. So I'm going to read and walk, go get food. I have an online group tonight, and then it'll be nice because there'll be nothing to do for a few days. So I talked a lot today. Hopefully it kind of makes sense. And one could think, well, having a crisis and then escaping to an island and sitting in peace and quiet in nature and not really doing too much, but reading and studying and walking in nature and earthing and being in the sun, like, that's escaping, that's not functioning, that's not being successful. But the alternative is having a big crisis, calling an ambulance, being dragged to the psych ward, seeing nurses, seeing psychiatrists, being drugged, being in a psych ward, interacting with psych patients who are suffering and seeing all that tragic suffering, all the PTSD that comes with that, and how being put in that situation fuels that system. If hopefully one day more of us can learn to get to a point where we can get away and we can manage, at least we're not feeding that system, and then it frees it up for people who are getting newly indoctrinated, and then the people who have learned to navigate to get out of it or move away from it. Still use some of the meds and stuff sometimes, or as minimal as possible, and at least being able to take less when one can. Then that will eventually one day maybe create a scenario where there is a wonderful sanctuary where people can go and not be put through all that in the first place. I feel the main hope is with us learning ourselves and moving away from it, as opposed to begging and pleading for the system to create a better system. Because where I am right now, I've managed to get to my own good system. Which isn't a system at all, it's nature. But the thing is, through the process, most of us become so fearful of ourselves that we can't imagine going through it ourselves. And I'm not saying people don't. People are very courageous and strong, and they get to a point where they can go through a lot of it for sure. But I think that saying to people there is hope that one day these major psychological crises or spiritual emergencies or extraordinary experiences or whatever you want to call them, they'll be less challenging. They'll be less intense. They'll be less challenging, so you can handle it on your own in different ways. You can figure out how to handle it on your own, so you don't have to go back to the hospital and be controlled, like be under the control of somebody else. So it takes a lot of learning to get to a point to have control within oneself, even when there's elements of oneself that is out of control. So I think that's hopeful, right? Oh, the other thing I was going to say came to me. It could have been, right as I was about to stop talking, it could have been also that before the crisis last week, if that was it, I was practicing not doing anything. I was sitting in nature a lot. I wasn't trying to create plans or schemes or projects or much of anything. And, crack in my back. Watching how the wind changes the ocean is beautiful. And that could have helped to not create more energy that needed to die away. Because the thing is, like, if I'm creating this direction of, I gotta do this, and I'm doing this, and I'm creating that, when the crisis comes and says, okay, now everything that you thought of recently or were trying to do is going in the garbage can, and there's nothing you can do about it, you're going to forget most of it. You're going to forget everything to the point you can't do much of anything. You can't even function. You can barely feed yourself, let alone start or finish 5 projects. I wasn't doing any of that. So that could have also lessened the intensity, was being in nature before it all fell apart, because I wasn't creating structures of human consciousness, of human constructs, of how to fix human constructs. If the energy was there, I didn't really feel it that much because I wasn't moving with it. I was not moving. I was literally laying on the earth in the grass or walking in the forest. So that could have created a buffer So it could be good to sort of go into a sanctuary before and after. And I don't know if most people know that it's cyclical for them in terms of how often it happens, and they can watch out for it. But if it's not cyclical in terms of time, one can figure out the signs. So yeah. It would be nice at some point to have some kind of kindness and generosity project. I don't really want to sit connected to the earth forever. I could, but we shall see. The boats are all pointed in different directions looking for the whales. Swim, whales, swim! This little tide pool just taught me a huge lesson. I had to pee, so I came over here and I peed down and it went into the tide pool. I wasn't really thinking, but I learned a lot from this experience because I peed in it, and then all of a sudden all those little water flea guys that are running around in there, they all tried to get out, and so many of them ran up over there and jumped off the edge into the ocean. It was like the peas in there, and they're like, and they're all trying to get out, and they get out, and they go, and they just jump off. They all know which way to go. So they go from this little comfortable pool, their home, and they're just willing to jump off into the unknown. Because the environment became unsuitable. It became inhospitable. It became uninhabitable. And then the interesting thing was that I used this little tide pool over here to dilute this one. And as soon as I did that, all of them, because it was draining off into the ocean, all the little fleas, they just came back and they went back in the pool. They no longer tried to jump off the edge. They were already down over here, but they just came walking back like they knew that it was fine now. So they came back. So this reminds me of so-called psychosis and mental health, where the environment is just not habitable anymore, and so people decide to jump into the unknown and end their life. But if the environment was suitable, people would just come back. They wouldn't do that. So that's what I learned from peeing in a tide pool, which I won't do again because it caused a lot of distress. But it just seemed like such a microcosm of what's happening. And they wouldn't even really know. Like, I saw the water went yellow, but they were just freaking out. They probably didn't even know what was going on. Probably just nothing they've ever felt before. They just knew something was so wrong and they had to get out of there. Just couldn't be a part of it anymore. So I'm sorry, little one, please. They're fine now. They'll probably evolve somehow with the extra nutrients. Plus the tide will come in soon and help them out. But yeah, just so you know, don't pee in a tide pool. But if you do, you'll see what's happening to humanity. All the little guys that are in there just start to run and jump off the edge. This little tide pool just taught me a huge lesson. I had to pee, so I came over here and I peed down and it went into the tide pool. I wasn't really thinking, but I learned a lot from this experience because I peed in it, and then all of a sudden all those little water flea guys that are running around in there, they all tried to get out, and so many of them ran up over there and jumped off the edge into the ocean. It was like the peas in there, and they're like, and they're all trying to get out, and they get out, and they go, and they just jump off. They all know which way to go. So they go from this little comfortable pool, their home, and they're just willing to jump off into the unknown. Because the environment became unsuitable. It became inhospitable. It became uninhabitable. And then the interesting thing was that I used this little tide pool over here to dilute this one. And as soon as I did that, all of them, because it was draining off into the ocean, all the little fleas, they just came back and they went back in the pool. They no longer tried to jump off the edge. They were already down over here, but they just came walking back like they knew that it was fine now. So they came back. So this reminds me of so-called psychosis and mental health, where the environment is just not habitable anymore, and so people decide to jump into the unknown and end their life. But if the environment was suitable, people would just come back. They wouldn't do that. So that's what I learned from peeing in a tide pool, which I won't do again because it caused a lot of distress. But it just seemed like such a microcosm of what's happening. And they wouldn't even really know. Like, I saw the water went yellow, but they were just freaking out. They probably didn't even know what was going on. Probably just nothing they've ever felt before. They just knew something was so wrong and they had to get out of there. Just couldn't be a part of it anymore. So I'm sorry, little one fleas. They're fine now. They'll probably evolve somehow with the extra nutrients. Plus the tide will come in soon and help them out. But yeah, just so you know, don't pee in a tide pool. But if you do, you'll see what's happening to humanity. All the little guys that are in there just start to run and jump off the edge. Look at all these little snails. They're going to be covered in water when the ocean comes in. Oh, he's attached. Look at them. They're waiting for a change of environment so they can come alive. They're in their cocoon. That's what those high energy states are like. It's like coming alive. And then you have to remember, when it's not the right environment, when there's the conditioning around and those things that would make us manifest as less ideal, just go into your shell and don't even talk to people. Wait for it to pass. Wait for the tide to come in. The tide of energy. There are so many of these little snails. They're everywhere. Wow. They look like rocks, but they're everywhere here. This is a good way to be with what is. This rock hopping, because if you're not, you could sprain your ankle. So hopping from rock to rock, there ain't much thinking. I really think there's something to staying out of society when one has a bipolar diagnosis, because when that energy comes in, we're amplifiers, and if we're in society, then we amplify society's structures, including the psychiatric system, which is part of society. It's part of reconditioning us to function within society when the energy comes in to create something new, which isn't a function of society, because the functions of society are already known, they're already old. It's a new energy to create something new. So it amplifies. But then within that system, it creates more of that and amplifies that. Look at all the seals. They're eating. Yum, 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 yum. I don't know if you can see them. Oh yeah, fish. I wasn't sure why I walked this way. I was walking back, but I came up on these rocks and there were all the seals. Talked about that before, how it seems that this being moves towards life. Not like thinking, oh, I gotta get back, but oh, what's over there? And it wasn't even a thought. I just walked over here. I don't know why. But now I do know why. It was to meet life. I came over to this tree. Can you see it? Dragonfly. How does one even begin to capture how magical it is in here? I don't know if you can see, but it's so magical. It's a lot of fun. Last night I took a trazodone and a half, which is 75 milligrams, and 2 quetiapine, which is 50 milligrams, and a quarter of a zopiclone, which I don't know how much that is. I think that was my second night taking the quarter of a zopiclone, and I took a Benadryl. So tonight I'll probably try to drop the zopiclone or have this little bitty piece that is left. It's probably an eighth of one or something. And I had weird dreams a little bit last night, like vivid dreams. I think that's the zopiclone. And I got up this morning and I made a smoothie. And throughout the day I've probably eaten 3 or 4 Lara bars. I'm kind of hungry. I wanted to go out for dinner last night, but I spent too much time at the beach. So I only had carrot sticks and hummus. So I think it was carrying over from that. And then I was up for a few hours and I just felt so tired. So I laid down and I was listening to an audio and I took a nap for probably a good hour or 2. I don't even know. And I sort of felt like I could sleep all day. And finally, I woke up and I felt like, okay, now I want to be outside. And so I found this trail that I wanted to go to. And there's another little lake I want to walk around. And I want to go to this town sort of on the other side of where I'm at and keep exploring, because nature is very healing. And do more of that first, and then at some point do the little things I need to do, like get more Benadryl, get a few things from the thrift store probably. And I looked on Amazon and that DVD, Mad to Be Normal, is on there. I want to see it, and I can't stream it online where I'm at, so we'll see. I might get that. Look at these 2 trees hugging. Oh, wow, nice beach. So much life in this one little tide pool. When the crabs heard me coming, they ran and hid. Those ones. was brave. His eyes are peeking out of the water. It's funny. Can I pet you? I'm gonna pet you in case I hurt you. Until I grab you. The other thing I don't think I talked about yet was that the 2 sleep masks, that one that I have and the Dream Sleeper over top, works pretty well because there is light coming in the window, and I put those 2 on, and the first night it was a little uncomfortable, but now I'm used to it. And I don't think it blocks out all the light, but when I'm closing my eyes, even in the morning time, it feels dark. If I open them, then I can see the light underneath a bit, but I think it is good enough, especially since I'm in such a beautiful place. It's not like I need to compensate with so much darkness to crowd out the noise. That's all I really have to talk about today. I could have sat and watched those crabs forever, but I thought I would do a little bit of earthing in the sand. I'm wondering if I just naturally fell asleep for a nap today, if that means I'm a little over-medicated, or if it means that I can fall asleep more naturally, and maybe I don't need as much medication because I'm in a quieter, peaceful environment without the noise of the possibility of having conflictual interactions. If I were in a psych ward right now, I would definitely feel conflicted, and the conflictual energy within me would manifest as conflict in that environment. But getting myself out of the situation of the possibility of conflict lessens the chance of something like needing a psych ward happening. Nature is my psych ward. There's a seal. I waved at him. There he is. The same hummingbird just flew up to me twice. It flew right in front of my face and then went to a tree and then it came back. So cute. This morning I was a little bit enthralled by the news of the death of Kate Spade. Mainly because, yeah, of course it's tragic, and there were words on the news about it being possibly related to bipolar disorder, but it being controversial because an estranged sister is the one making those claims. And there was a suicide note to her daughter saying it's not your fault. And it's strange, yesterday I was talking about finding a way to end my life that would save the lives of others because of how 20% of people with bipolar do end up doing it. They do end up ending their lives. And if somebody who has it all materially, like Kate Spade or Robin Williams, they do it, then anyone can do it. obviously anyone can do it. So I was talking about that yesterday, and then today I read that yesterday, that's what I was talking about to myself, is it's a huge possibility. And she was 55, I think. Well, so I might have 20 years left. I don't know. And then the other weird thing, though, is they found her hanging by a scarf from a doorknob. And I really don't know if that's possible, to hang oneself from a doorknob. I think fight or flight would kick in and not want to, like, the body wouldn't want to die. Of course, I don't know for sure, but usually when people end their life by hanging, they're hanging. It seems kind of strange to me that she would be hanging from a doorknob, which generally those are not high enough to have the effect of gravity, unless one did something else, maybe like take a bunch of pills to make one less aware, like one was sort of passing anyway, and then the hanging from a doorknob was kind of irrelevant. But who knows? The thing is, once the first bit of news comes out saying it's suicide and bipolar, that's what everybody thinks it is. It could be something else. Why do people think that trees are a carving canvas? I'm sorry, tree. I'll give you a kiss right on your lips here. I'm trying to apologize for what human beings are doing to them. I've got my earthing shoe attachment on. This forest feels so ancient. It's lovely, magical. It smells good. Reminds me of camping when I was 4 years old. Last night, I took 75 milligrams of trazodone, and I took less than a quarter of zopicone. I broke off a piece, so tonight I'm going to take the crumbs of the zopicone and 75 trazodone. And then last night I took 50 milligrams of quetiapine. I took a Benadryl. So after tonight, after just taking the bits of zopicone, tomorrow night I'll take 50 plus 12.5 of trazodone. I'll quarter the trazodone and see how low I can get down on that. And if I can totally taper off that slowly, then I will add back in the St. John's wort and the tryptophan, which I can't take if I'm on any kind of SSRI. Oh yeah, back to hanging oneself by a doorknob. I think that would be kind of like trying to drown oneself in a pool just by sticking one's head underwater. You can't do it. I don't know though. So I don't want to say, oh, it's so sad that Kate Spade ended her life, when maybe she didn't. I don't want to go with what the news is saying. But, no, Robin Williams definitely did. And so anyone can end up ending their life. It can get so painful. I personally, I'll know better after this month. Like, this month is really telling about having a bit of a crisis and then getting oneself to nature and peace, as opposed to creating drama. So this comes back to the epigesturetic matrix thing. If I'm around people, places, things, ideas that are easy for me to channel those lower states into gestures to sort of pass it on. Those lower energy states, they really want to replicate themselves. They want to be passed on to another person. And one feels like they're in pain or anger, or frustration, sorrow, guilt, blame, shame. One wants to put the blame on someone, wants to feel shame from somebody. But in an epigesturetic matrix of nature, the trees aren't going to make one feel shameful, or can't blame the trees. And nature is already an enlightened state of consciousness. So in so-called bipolar, one goes up to high energy, practically feels like everything's perfect, all-knowing, enlightenment at some points, everything's so magical, and then it drops out. Because the thing is that we're moving around in the human world, which is a human-created fiction over thousands and thousands of years. So that can't really sustain it. It can't be sustained, because one eventually gets to see, wait a minute, this way I feel within, this overflowing of energy, it's not being mirrored back. This world would want to mirror back anger and conflict, and there's some good stuff in the human world too, but it's relative. It's not absolute, where nature is relative, though one could say one wouldn't want to be here in a big rainstorm or snowstorm or windstorm. A branch could fall or a rock, and it could still happen, but wouldn't really be a big problem. So yeah, having the epigesturetic matrix of nature, being able to walk in nature, breathe in the fresh air, be in sort of an original world before human construction, mostly, because humans constructed this trail, but be enveloped and surrounded by, instead of the last 1,000 years of momentum of human society and beyond, be around the last however many 1,000 years of nature. And it's getting warm. I need to take off my extra layer. So in the past, when I've had a crisis, a couple years ago now, I was hospitalized, and that gives an outlet to perpetuate the chaos. That inner state, those lower states are chaotic, and they want to create more chaos. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with going to the psych ward, but when I had to go, it just created all this chaos. It feeds the need for that system. When, depending on how this month works out, because I could have a major crisis still, and I could end up in a nearby hospital. So I have to see. But for now, it seems like I had a bit of a crisis. I was able to keep the chaos to myself, most of it, and explain myself a little bit, and then get away. And besides the first day, where I felt a little bit of weird anxiety in my heart, I haven't felt anything since. I felt fine. So, no chaos created. Like, think of all the moving parts in the psych system that aren't moving because I got away from it. I didn't get trapped in that system of perpetuating chaos. I didn't allow that chaos to be perpetuated. And that takes a lot of learning. It really does. And I'm not saying that I'll be able to stay out of it indefinitely. I do have fears about possibilities of one day being found catatonic and being zapped with ECT or something. But like, there's so many possibilities still of getting entrapped in the system. Or one thing that happens to people who have a diagnosis a lot, or can happen, is they have a real medical problem and they keep getting thrown in the psych ward, and the medical problem never gets discovered. Or one goes in complaining of physical symptoms and they're like, oh, and one gets thrown in the psych ward. So knowing that too, I really do need to keep my body healthy. Oh, it feels so good just to be in a forest on a lake. People need to be taken to a forest, not a psych ward. Because we're absorbing all the chaos of humanity. And the ones that absorb the chaos and aren't able to participate in it like it's just fine get punished. But if one can get one to a scenario where it is just fine, then maybe one doesn't need to be punished by others. One can be healed by nature. And again, I don't know. I have to see how this month goes. If I'm able to taper off the meds and only be on 2 quetiapine again, that will be a good win. Maybe I could even try tapering off quetiapine. If I did, though, I don't think I'd ever want to go back. I think I'd want to stay with nature. And there's nothing wrong with that. Some brains are designed to be outside of all the chaos. And that could be one of the problems when one gets into that really energetic state and everything seems so beautiful and magical. If one stays within mostly the human world, we're putting all the energy towards that. And I think, say we were totally energetic and then we were put in a forest and we'd be frolicking and feeling like nature is absolutely beautiful. I think what the world needs is a lot more human beings seeing that, because we need to save nature first. Not save nature, leave it alone. Be in it, appreciate its beauty, marvel at its wonders instead of tearing it apart for science and commerce. And I think that energy that comes in bipolar could be a big part of helping to see the beauty of that which is rapidly disappearing. And if we don't, I think the suicide thing is going to happen more rapidly, because life will be felt as meaningless. Wow, look at those houses up there. Imagine living in the middle of peace. Look, it's like a freshwater shrimp or something. Or lobster. So strange. Someone in the lake. Little fish. There's another one. Over here. I was gonna see if I could save this moth in this web, but the spider's already got him. What a great little spot to sit quietly. It's right on the edge of this rock. And it's just this little rock coming out from the woods. And then you go back into the woods. And then all there is the lake. I'm gonna try dipping my foot in. Cold, not that bad. I didn't mention yet that this morning I didn't take the uridine or the deserine or the SAMI. I'm not sure if there's another one, but I took methylfolate and I took a bit of inositol powder. So just testing out to see if I really need those extras, because I don't want to use them up if I need them for later in the month. And I took the brain gastrodin, alpha GCP, and CDP choline, and I will continue to take those. My feeling is, though, being in a situation like this, out in nature, sitting out at the edge of a rock right next to the lake, that the brain doesn't need so many nutrients in order to build and repair itself. So I'm wondering about this question of escapism versus maybe it's more economical to live in a beautiful space because I don't have to spend $200 a month on supplements. But I don't know that yet because I haven't tested it out. There's something about the brain needing to adapt itself to unnatural things versus being in a natural space and not needing to take extra of things in order to adapt. If it gets a bit warmer in the next couple weeks, I might try to go fruitarian for a little bit. We'll see. I say that now, but I'm just so lazy. I don't like to cook for myself, especially when in a new environment. And so I had sushi yesterday again, but it's a little bit too expensive to do that all the time. So we'll see what happens there. But I wanted to give an update on the supplement regime. I'm exploring somewhere new after that beautiful lakeside trail. I love that place. I'll definitely go back. Now I'm along the ocean and I bought a few candies. I just had 2 apples and I felt like getting a few candies. Partly because the little store I went to still sells these candies for 5 cents a piece. Other places, they sell it for 10 cents or they've stopped selling them separately where you can pick. So this was a score. And I was thinking about how maybe one day I won't feel the need to talk about anything and record it, but I'll record the beauty of nature, because I don't know if there's much beauty in trying to resolve the self. That part is still ugly, so yeah. I also haven't had any coffee since the night I couldn't sleep, which was last Tuesday. So for over a week. I quit coffee a long time. Last year when I was in California, I just automatically quit. Being in that environment and that beauty, I didn't really feel the need to have that extra stimulation in order to make myself feel up for the day. think I just saw a whale. No, I don't know if that's a whale. Maybe a seal.